The first thing you should know is that there is a silliness to this parable. Now, this is not always the case, right? When Jesus tells parables, for instance, the most famous of which, the parable of the the parable of the Good Samaritan, where we see a man who is beaten, robbed, and left for dead by the side of the road. The next thing you know, he's being passed by in the story Jesus tells by all these righteous and so-called holy people. They ignore him, walk out of their way to avoid him. It isn't until an outsider, a Samaritan of all people, comes, has mercy, takes the man back, and brings him to health. It's only then that we see the point of the story, and it is a story that has some gravitas, some urgency about it. That's not the story for today. Today is a silly story. Jesus tells it, I imagine, with something of a smile, maybe even a smirk on his face, because frankly, it's almost foolish. Here's how it begins. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. Pause. Are there any experts in mustard seeds out there? No? That's good, because I am not. Everything I know about mustard seeds, I read about it in 2 commentaries and this wonderful new machine called Google. You just type in the word and this is what I know about mustard seeds. I know 3 things. First, I know mustard seeds that Jesus is referring to have absolutely, positively nothing to do with what you put on your hot dogs. All right? That has nothing to do with the sermon, but I just thought I would share. That's information for life. The second thing, a mustard seed is 1 to 2 millimeters in size. It is tiny. And third, and this is the important part, in the days of Jesus, the size of a mustard seed, it was an expression. It would be similar to if you're talking to a friend, and the friend says, let's meet for coffee, I'm feeling kind of blue today. You don't expect to walk into the coffee shop and see your friend looking like Papa Smurf, right? That's a very outdated reference, a blue figure. I shouldn't be referencing cartoons that are 35 years old, right? Something more. Okay, you don't expect them to be all blue, literally. When Jesus refers to the size of a mustard seed, what people would have thought of is that's the tiniest thing we can imagine. It is the tiniest thing we can see. It is so small that if it's in the palm of your hands, if you don't have your cheaters on, you have to extend the full length of your arm just to see what it is. Right? That's what Jesus is talking about. The kingdom of heaven is like this little mustard seed. Then when it is placed into the ground, wait, pause. Think about what Jesus just said. I don't know if you know this, I'm from Iowa. Okay, I've mentioned that before. Okay, good. So I grew up in town, but it was a town so small that outside in our backyard, behind our backyard, there were goats and there were sheep. If you walked out my front door, literally walked out the front door and across the street, you'd be standing in a cornfield. All right? And I was a city kid. I don't know a great deal about farming, but growing up in that community, I know one thing of which I am most certain, and it is this. A farmer does not start up the John Deere tractor, hitch up the plant, go out into the field, take out the bag of seed, and take out one seed and put it in the planter and call it a day. That's not how you plant things. And yet that's what happens in the story Jesus is telling. The farmer goes out and he plants one. The tiniest seed you can imagine. He plants one seed. Friends, there would be no reason to have combines if that's how farming was practiced. And yet that's what happens in the story Jesus tells. Again, there's a silliness, a foolishness about it. We don't know anything about the seed. We don't know if it's tended to. We don't know if the farmer shows up to water. We just know that in the story Jesus tells, it begins to grow. It's like a miracle an unexpected occurrence, it begins to grow and it grows and it grows, and the next thing you know, this little tiny mustard seed, it becomes the greatest of all shrubs. This great big bush, so big it's bigger than a tree. It's so large that the birds come and build their nest in it. Think about this big, large tree, the birds building the nest coming from this tiny, tiny little speck of a seed. It's silly. It's almost like 6 years ago when a couple of gentlemen came and shared with me an idea. They said, Pastor, we've tried some different men's groups here. Some have worked, some have not. We have the Men Mission, they're a faithful group. We have the men's cooking teams, they're great. But we've got this new idea, this great idea for a new men's ministry here at United Lutheran. And so I paused, because I wanted to hear what this great, big, new idea was, when one of them said, so we would like to meet at Liberty's. I said, okay, what else? Nope, that's it. That's your entire idea. You're going to meet at Liberty's. No, like, book, no curriculum, no plan, no hope, no just, that's it. And what I said was, sounds great, I support you, give it a try. And in my heart I was thinking, we need some better ideas than this, or our church is doomed, right? This was a small, little, dare I say, tiny idea. Almost foolish. Fast forward to 6 months ago. I was in our kitchen on a Wednesday night. I was talking with Russ L. Russ passed away a few weeks ago. Many of you know Russ, a great and faithful man. We were in the kitchen. One of us was doing dishes. One of us was eating a cookie. It doesn't matter which one was which. And Russ started talking to me. Actually, he was thanking me for encouraging him to try that beer and banter group a couple of years before. And he started talking about what these guys had come to mean in his life. After he had lost his wife, it was really through them and through others that he found purpose and he found community. And as he told his story, his face lit up like a kid in a candy store and his eyes welled up with tears. And as I listened to him talk, I realized this is the person who in this moment is giving witness to how the kingdom of God became manifest in his life. How the kingdom of heaven that Jesus describes showed up in his own life. And it started with this small, little, dare I say, tiny, silly idea. And God did this. 5.5 years ago, I told you another story. I'm going to tell it again because 5.5 years, I'm guessing some of you have forgotten. 5.5 years ago, I told you the story of what happened in my town. In my town, I did not know this as a kid, but it's very clear to me now that there were multiple churches, but everyone had a church they were supposed to go to. For instance, if you were a have person, you went to the Presbyterian or Methodist church. If you were a person who had things. If you were a have-not, you went to the Baptist or the Assembly of God churches in town. If you were Catholic, you drove 2 towns over like my family did. If you were Lutheran, sorry, you're out of luck. There were no Lutheran churches. All right? The wealthiest church in town, the Presbyterian Church, was the only church wealthy enough to hire a youth pastor, a youth director. And so he started an after-school program for kids of the community. They were located a couple blocks from the school. It worked out pretty well. 15, maybe 20 kids would show up from the community. They would have a little Bible lesson, play a couple games, give them a snack, send them home. One day it was raining. It was just pouring. And so all these kids were lined up at the door. And the first 13 left with mom and dad coming, swinging through, picking them up, the kids running. And there were 2 kids. 2 kids, Andy and Tammy, who stood at the door waiting. They weren't watching for a ride. They were waiting for the rain to let up. When it became obvious the rain wasn't going to let up, the one who had her coat threw it on. Andy did not, and they started walking home in the pouring down rain. The youth director saw them walking through the rain. He ran out, he got in his car, he drove the block to pick them up and said, come here, I'll give you a ride. They directed him to their house. They got out of the car, they ran inside. He got ready to pull away, and he realized, no, if I were a parent, and I looked out the window and I saw a stranger dropping my kids off, I would like to know who this stranger is. So he got out of the car, he went up to the door and he knocked, pouring down the rain, just wanted to introduce himself. Suddenly the door pops open, and their father is there. Their father, a big, barrel-chested man, wearing a white undershirt, 2 sizes too small, covered in grease. Doesn't even say hello. Tim says, hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm the youth director from the Presbyterian Church. Holds out his hand. The father just nods at him. Barely. Doesn't say hello, certainly does not shake his hand. Tim talks for a minute. Man says nothing. Finally, Tim says, thanks for letting your kids come. They're great kids, which was a lie. Okay? The oldest son, everybody knew was up to no good. He was never going to graduate school. We knew that for sure. The sister, Tammy, she didn't even speak. Literally, she didn't speak in school. Nobody would ever hear her voice. At best, she would whisper something. Great kids, they're always in trouble. No, but he was saying the polite thing. At that moment, the dad smiled just a bit. Just a bit. Tim said, well, it's nice to meet you. He walked down the steps, and before he left, he turned around and he said, by the way, if you ever want to come to worship, we worship at 9:30. I'll meet you there. You're always welcome. Or something like that. It was a small, little, dare I say, tiny little invitation. What could God possibly do with that? That Sunday, the dad showed up. He showed up in worship. He walked into the church. People looked at him like, what in the world are you doing here? The usher stared at him. He stared right back at the usher. This guy who had never gone to church before, didn't know what he was supposed to do. Thankfully, the youth director happened to be walking by. Just got done teaching Sunday school. Said, come on in. Come and sit with me. And they sat together. And I wish I could tell you. I wish I could tell you that morning everything changed. But that's not how growth works, right? Growth doesn't go from a seed to a tree overnight. But something did start to happen. Transformation started to occur thanks to that youth director and a couple of lovely elders from that congregation. That man who was not welcome really anywhere in the community was made to feel welcome in that congregation. And about a year later, another couple guys from the church said, hey, we're cleaning the church. I don't even know if it was planned. They were probably just having coffee, and they said, hey, we're going to be cleaning the church here. It's our month to do that. Why don't you want to come and help us out? And he showed up. This guy who had not worked in the community for at least 10 years, who was able-bodied but simply did not work, he showed up and he started working at the church, cleaning. He loved it. He kept doing it, month after month. The year after I graduated high school, this man had a job. In fact, this man owned his own cleaning company. His life was changed because of that community. That little boy who was never going to graduate high school, he graduated. That little girl who couldn't speak, she became a high school speech teacher. A little, small, tiny little invitation. If I told you that would lead to a transformation, not just in an individual, but an entire family that is passed down for generations, you would tell me that's silly. That's foolishness. And yet, when I look back at that experience, I realized I didn't know it at the time, but I was witnessing the kingdom of heaven becoming present in the lives of people in the community I grew up in. This is what God does. It shouldn't surprise us, right? You know the Bible stories. God looks at an elderly couple who have long since given up on having children. God sees them. The world has forgotten. God says, you know what? I'm going to give you a child. They can't believe it. God says, I'll do more than that. That I will make you the parents of a great nation. They laugh. And yet Isaac is born to Abraham and Sarah, and the nation of Israel is born with him. This is what God does. God looks at the Hebrew people who are slaves in the land of Egypt. And while the Egyptian chariot drivers are bearing down on them, God, through the prophet Moses, says, do not be afraid. Stand up and you will see the Lord's deliverance. It sounds like nonsense in their ears. But it sounds pretty good when the Red Sea is torn apart and they walk across dry ground. This is what God does. We see it most clearly in the person of Jesus Christ, carrying the cross up the hill of Golgotha. It is there in the darkest hour where Jesus, who simply came to give us his love, is rejected by all humanity. It is there in that dark moment that Jesus hangs on the cross, where he chooses to take your sin and mine and put it to death for love for you and faithfulness to the Father. It sounds like nonsense. It sounds silly. Indeed, it sounds foolish. But in that darkest moment, we see the kingdom of heaven becoming real in our lives. This is what God does. This is not just what God did. This is what God does. And so people, you followers of Jesus Christ, who are surrounded by the love and grace of God, what's your mustard seed going to be this week? What is, you don't have to go big. What is that small, dare I say, tiny little idea or act that God has placed in your heart that you're going to put in the ground this week? What is it? I can give you at least one idea. You look around this morning, you have a couple of confirmation students feverishly taking sermon notes. Can you tell? They're into this, right? On those sermon notes, there is a place for a prayer request. Do you know the most popular prayer request of all of our young people? Snow days. I mean, they're confirmation students. What do you expect? And young people, knock it off, all right? Just quit praying for snow days right now. But do you know my favorite prayer request? It is the 1/8 grader who week after week after week prays for her 3-year-old cousin that he would finally be healthy. What is her mustard seed this week? I'm quite certain it's going to be love her 3-year-old cousin to the fullest of her capability. And to trust that somehow God can take her little love and do something extraordinary in the life of her family and beyond. That's her idea. What is yours? What is your little mustard seed going to be this week? Because, friends, God has a habit of taking this, something so small, and doing something extraordinary with it. So I for one, am excited to see what God does in and through you this week.